a 7-year marriage, and not for reasons anyone around me seemed to understand, except for maybe Adrian. Keith hadn't been physically abusive, he hadn't cheated on me, and to everyone around us, we'd seemed perfect. We posted pictures on social media of us opening his first practice, visiting New York for Fashion Week, sharing sweets at Pike Place, and even just lounging around on Sundays. We were perfect. At least, we made it seem that way. No one knew the struggles we had behind closed doors. They didn't know how my loving husband had begun to resent me and the success of the boutique, especially since he'd always seen sketching and sewing as hobbies. He was always so focused on his own dreams that he didn't think to take mine seriously. And I was okay with that, for a long time. Until the report cards, as I liked to call them, started rolling in. Every 3 to 4 months, like clockwork, Keith would get angry about something, and we'd fight until dawn. When I say fight, I mean he would tell me every way I was failing him as a wife, and I would cry and vow to do better, all the while defending everything he called out in the first place. It took me a long time to realize that he wasn't angry at me, but rather at himself, for reasons he would never explain to me. But even after counseling, and even after the papers were signed, Keith never saw it as an anger issue. He still felt that it was my actions that made him angry, and that I was a selfish woman. Selfish. I'd heard the word so many times over the past few years it might as well have been tattooed on my forehead, or maybe across my chest like the scarlet letter. Maybe I was selfish. I wasn't sure I could argue that point. My dreams were important to me, as was my career. But I still loved Keith. I always wanted him to be the best he could be. I always wanted to help him get there. But somewhere along the way, our love grew black, charred from an angry fire fueled by resentment. No one ever gets married thinking they'll end up divorced, and now that I was on the other side of that unfortunate destiny, I had to figure out who I was again. And I had no idea where to start. I didn't know what it was like to be completely alone, and I was scared. I told Adrian I'd be fine, that I was excited to get out on my own for a while, that I needed space. But I'd never known loneliness. Not truly. I didn't know the kind of lonely that seeped all the way into my bones when literally no one in the entire world was talking to me, wondering about me, or waiting for me. I wondered if I'd survive it. But something strange happened when I turned onto the roughly paved road that would lead me to my home for the next few months. The fear of loneliness slowly drifted out my open windows, and an unmoving sense of all-rightness fell into its place. A quiet whisper, growing louder every mile until it was a booming voice. I smiled, wiping the remnants of my tears away as my GPS announced that I'd arrived at my destination. The first beauty I found as a freshly divorced 27-year-old was that I didn't owe anyone anything either. I didn't owe my ex-husband another year, minute, second of my life. I didn't owe anyone an explanation of why our marriage failed. I didn't owe any other man or person in general a phone call to check in, or an apology for something I loved to do that they disagreed with. For the first time in my life, I was owed nothing. And I owed nothing. Lonely or not, I was free. I cut the engine on my Kia Sportage, and as soon as I did, I was surrounded by quiet. Not the kind of quiet I was accustomed to from living in the city, where there was always a constant hum of cars and voices. No, this was a peaceful quiet, with just the faintest sound of water running nearby, and birds singing their songs to the new girl in town. May was nearly over, but the air was still a brisk 62 degrees as evening began to fall. I tucked my hands into the pockets of my light leather jacket as I scanned the front of the cabin. It was 3 stories, the first consisting only of what appeared to be a small garage next to the stairs that led up to the second level. Freshly cut firewood lined the side of the garage, and 2 simple rocking chairs along with 1 long cushioned bench sat on the small front porch. My eyes scaled the dark wood of the cabin up to the red roof and trim, following it to the left side, where there was a small view of the river that I was sure would be even better from